Okay, so good evening, everybody, for this webinar that is special to my heart and to everybody, of course, who has joined us in. Uh, Infection control and antibiotics have been probably the global concern, and therefore infection control protocols and everything was always in place. But the focus has come onto it because of corona, the COVID virus, and everybody's got highly into the relook of all sorts of sanitization and disinfection. We have an esteemed panel of doctors to give us practical aspects of personal hygiene, sanitization, disinfection, air, surface, instruments, and post-lockdown disinfection routine. Because the most important concern in this virus is it is considered it's there on the air, it's there on surfaces and on hands. And therefore, the concern is much higher than we've ever seen in the past. We have with us tertiary care hospitals have always had the advantage of having well qualified microbiologists. They've had a CSSB team. They have everything with their. But like we've said now, the Prime Minister has said Atmanirbhar, and the focus is on the MSMEs. That means the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Obviously, nursing homes are the backbone of the healthcare system, and unfortunately, we haven't probably come in the mainstream as much as we deserve to come. Whenever the public sector fails, it's the nursing home which has supported. And it's because the nursing homes today are crippled that the tertiary cares and the government hospitals together are unable to face this massive pandemic. What we have done is try to bring in the best microbiologist. We have Dr. Rohini Kelkar, a very well-known microbiologist from Tata, who has been spearheading, and she's considered a legend in this field. We have Dr. Aruna Pujari, the head of Department of Pathology and Microbiology, Breach Candy, and she's a hands-on. We can see she's really in her office even now, and she's going to be telling us a lot about it. We have our own Manoj Gandhi. When I say he stands tall, he stands really tall, both as a laparoscopic surgeon and a Nursing Home Association secretary, and having his own nursing home, and is again a hands-on boss for his business. Nilima Bhamre, a well-established obstetrician gynecologist, a firebrand rock star, good friend of mine, and presently running her nursing home actively at Kandivali, as well as she's the secretary of Association of Medical Consultants. We have Anchal Gupta from Hospimart, where she's a well-known distributor for bioindicators for autoclave and sterilization, and she's also going to give a bit about how we should choose our products and how we should get to know the product is good or not. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Sangeeta Pikle. I'm presently the Director of Healthcare Sector Skill Council, advisor to the Tata Institute of Social Sciences School of Vocational Education, and past president of AMC. We thank Sirmaxo and the company which has given us the platform. The reason I say this is again another Make in India, Skill India, wherein the larger MNCs have failed to give us the necessary amount of sanitizers, hypochlorides, and everything. It's the Indian industries which have come, and today's endeavor is both the small and medium healthcare providers as well as the medium enterprise that is now going to be partnering with the nursing homes in order to see that we hold our economy together and promote each other, as well as best we can for the medium-sized enterprises. So we'll straight away go to the questions with this intro. Dr. Manoj Gandhi, what are the prime concerns that nursing homes face regarding corona? What are the strategies of prevention?
Sangeeta and Sarmaxo, thank you for inviting me for this presentation today. Well, as far as small healthcare hospitals are concerned, we are actually fighting for survival today. I agree that even major corporate hospitals are fighting for survival, but the small healthcares are in a doomed situation. And as Jack Ma has said, that if we live our life in 2020, then we are already rich. So it is actually survival of the fittest. As far as small healthcare centers are concerned, my point is that we small health hospitals are actually providing healthcare, were providing healthcare to 60 to 70% of the population in Mumbai at least. And I'm sure this would be the same story across India. And before the lockdown, were providing the same services. But after the lockdown, 70% are almost shut. And 20% are, still finding ways how to sanitize, what is hand sanitizer, what is, a fumigation machine, what solution to use. So it's a really sad situation.
Yes.
So what I would like to say that as small hospitals, we would like to know a few things wherein we have our own small setups where we have an OPD, an IPD, a nursing staff which is ill qualified in all the infection control practices. They are all coming from real hot zones. Like my all 15 staff is from hot zones. So it's a real struggle for us to restart our setups. So we would like to know what is low cost ideal hand wash, because that is the first step when a patient or the nursing staff enters the hospital. So what is a sanitizer or a hand wash which should be ideal for any person to enter a hospital? Then what is the ideal fumigation or machine and solution which is to be used, which can be low cost for sanitizing the entire nursing home, because most of them would be now restarting their nursing homes, so they'll probably have to re-sanitize the entire hospital before they start. If there is a COVID positive patient, then again they'll have to re-sanitize the hospital. They'll have to take care of their staff, how to train them for all the infection control practices. They have to be taught right from everything, wearing gloves, what are the types of gloves to be worn, what is the hand sanitization methods, hand wash methods, what is fumigation, what is surface disinfection, what solutions are to be used. So basically, all the ideal low cost solutions which could be ideal for hand sanitization, surface disinfection, instrument sterilization, and fumigation. This is what we small healthcare hospitals are looking at. We are all single nursing home owners, single consultant nursing home who are looking after all these aspects. So we need to know all these things. So I think in today's meeting, we'll be in a position to clarify all these things.
Yes, so Manoj, you've told us the difficulties that's small, and I said these are physician-led nursing homes, so the physician has the clinical job as well as taking care of all aspects. Nilima, you've been running a nursing home even during these times, and I've heard you in the commissioners meeting giving us, direct tips. So I would like you to share how you are dealing with it right now on the ground. And of course, our microbiologist will have the last say of what we are doing. Is it right, good enough, or we need to add? Please.
Yeah. One thing that we realized is that a lot of infections are happening in places where people are not prepared with the protection. In the hospital, though we are facing a lot of patients, symptomatic or asymptomatic, tested and non-tested, we are inadvertently coming into touch with these kind of infections, and we are not even aware whether the virus is present or absent. We are considering it to be ubiquitous. So what I did is that I did not want to shut my hospital even for one day. I spoke to my staff, and whatever staff could possibly stay in the hospital, I made them reside in the hospital. So the question of going and coming did not arise. I had a full-time staff, 3 sisters who were staying with me, one coming and going, because staff was a major crunch. As well, the patient admissions had gone down drastically. So I thought one ward I could convert it to staff residence. So that took care of my staff problem. That also took care that my hospital, we are very few patients. So when we give appointments, we are working absolutely by appointment system. When we give appointments on phone, I have trained my staff to ask questions about fever, about cough, about loose motions, about them being in contact with travelers, about them being in contact with positive patients, them coming from containment areas, them coming from quarantine buildings. So we always triage on phone. Whenever I ask the patient, an appointment is then given. Once an appointment is given, all the papers of the patients, we tell them, keep your papers at home. We do not want your file. So whatever is important, we ask them to screenshot leke, we ask them to send it on WhatsApp. So all my appointments are 15 minutes ke antar pe dete hain, and all patients send it on WhatsApp. I first cross check, because more than 15 minutes contact with the patient is not good. So we have to finish our consultations also within that time constraint. So all these reports, when I take on phone, I have already seen what is happening with the patient. So the patient comes inside. We have given strict instructions that only either if they can walk in without an attendant, they should come alone, not get the attendant at all. If they are not comfortable, then get the attendant. The attendant will not come inside the hospital. Any hospital staff, like my reception, she comes from outside. So she only occupies the receptionist chair. She does not go inside the hospital. All staff coming from outside only are allowed to attend only till the reception counter, not to go inside. Now my receptionists, when they come, we check with the infrared and we check the SpO2. Any patient having any temperature or SpO2 below 94, we always triage them from there only, and we tell them, you have to go to a fever clinic and get yourself checked, and then the entry inside the hospital is done. All other criteria, once they have passed that criteria, the patient comes inside, does not sit anywhere, does not touch anything. We give them hand sanitizer the moment they come inside, so their hands are sanitized. Then they come into the consulting room. Again, no sitting, no touching, nothing. On the examination table, we've kept those very thin plastic sheets where the patient sleeps. We examine before touching the patient. We are already wearing the PPE kits. What we are using is the plastic raincoats. Okay, because we cannot afford to use these disposable PPE kits in the OPD. So we started using that, and we are wearing gloves at all times. All my staff is wearing a face shield. We are wearing 3-ply masks. Everyone is wearing that raincoat kind of thing. Everyone is wearing gloves. But when we wear gloves does not mean that we are not passing infection. So your hand sanitizer before touching any patient is very important. After examining the patient, again we sanitize our hand. All these examine patients, the fresh we give that to be because we require documentation. So when that patient comes in, on a small letterhead, we write whatever we have found and we give that paper to that patient to file at home. The next time the patient comes inside, that screenshot is sent to us. Patient does not come back with the file. So that is one precaution we have taken. Every patient, when the patient gets out of the examination table, the sheet is changed. That sheet is put into a bucket which is kept over there with soap and water. And we keep all the sheets like that over there collected, because there are very few patients whom we are taking at one time, maybe 4 patients or 5 patients appointment, not more than that. Because to sit in that PP for those many hours is very, very tragic. I mean, you get drained after the whole thing. When we are admitting patients also, we are trying to tell the patient ki one attendant with the patient, operative patient hai, so they require an attendant. So once that attendant enters into the hospital, he will get discharged with the patient. He's not allowed to go back. He's not allowed to go for anything. Whatever they require, that saman comes to the hospital gate and we get it from there. We disinfect the saman also before the saman comes inside. So this is what strict action we are taking. And also post-operative patients, operative patients, we are using absorbable sutures for skin also, that the patient does not have to come back for stitch removal. So we're trying to avoid as many visits as possible. Every patient before coming has to talk to me, because sometimes the patient, my receptionist, may make a mistake. She may forget to ask some question. So once that is done, the second triage is done by me. And we're being extremely careful about all these kind of things. Now, in between patients also, once the patient, the OPD, before the OPD, I'm doing alternate day OPDs. So one day we fumigate the room and keep. The next day when the OPD is open, that time everything is well settled and we don't have any smell and all that. Plus the wards, once the patient has left the room, what we do is our regular fumigator that we are using for the OT, the same fumigator, but we are using plain water in it, because I feel the water droplets itself will catch the surface down, and then we clean the surfaces with either sodium hypochlorite or Lysol. And after that, once we start from one end of the hospital, we clean the entire floor, and then that gives it a standing time for the bacteria to be killed or the viruses to be killed. And then the second layer, we do only plain water cleaning. So the layer of hypochlorite is also taken away. So that is the way we are managing currently. And I don't know what.
No, I think you've said it all. If I look at this,
Can I just add one line?
Yes, please.
Nilima, I think whatever you have said, I've been following up almost 99% to the T. And I'm happy to hear that, although not IPD wise, but OPD wise, yes. And I have in fact taken the control of my reception in such a way that I have diverted both my landline numbers to my mobile. So every phone call is just attended by me. And I don't call a patient without any of his medical history or reports being sent to me on WhatsApp. So I think everybody should follow up that.
The care that we are taking also is very important, because we have small babies and we have post-operative patients, right. And we are minimizing our visits to the patient also.
So we need to go to Aruna. So I like what Nilima says. If I could look at it, it is basically she's taken care of environment with air and surface in her what I would call as a most frugal manner. She's looked at hand hygiene, social distancing, physical isolation, screening and cohorting patients, which is again very important. She's looked at the personal equipments that they were carrying, personal items that they're carrying. She's done something called safety culture that each organization can define. She has done some form of surveillance. That means she will look into what is the patient's history next time, IR, all those, and she's followed guidelines. I think that's brilliant. Aruna, we are going to come to you after this because I think Nilima has briefed in her own way the protocols. And Nilima, I look forward to you creating, and we'll share with all our nursing home owners who had come in the way you had written. If we could make an SOP and share it with all our members, of course, we'll get it ratified with our 2 experts. Meanwhile, Aruna, corona is known to survive and stay on various surfaces, and the surface transmission is the biggest problem, which is at the current scenario. I would like to ask you to go into, let's take about air disinfection, we'll take surface disinfection, and I'm going to put all of them together because I know Aruna and Rooney can take the whole session together. Large surfaces, small surfaces, I'd like you to cover all of this, and then maybe on hand hygiene. A microbiologist perspective.
First, let us go stepwise. The hand hygiene would be the first step when anybody is entering a premises. So I think let's go from that point of view first. I feel so.
No,
I leave it to the panelists how they want to go.
That's what I said. I leave it to Aruna. She can take it. I'm putting the whole thing to her.
Okay, so I agree with Dr. Manoj that hand hygiene is the most important thing, and I think today we have, meaning for the last probably 14 years, we as microbiologists and infection prevention experts have been harping upon hand hygiene, and people have not been very serious about it, and now we are very glad that everyone wants to do hand hygiene. So hand hygiene, that terminology by itself, has 2 components to it. One is a hand rub, which is basically alcohol based, and the other part of it is hand wash, which is detergent based. Now, there's a full WHO document on this, and I'm sure a lot of us would have already visited it, and in fact read it multiple number of times. So the steps are such that it should involve all parts of the hands, especially the ones that you tend to miss, like the tips of the fingers, the thumb, the interspaces of the between the fingers, and so on. Now you can choose to do hand hygiene or hand wash depending upon what are your opportunities, and with that I would want everyone to be referred toward the 5 moments of hand hygiene. Again, I'm not going to explain that because that's not the absolute agenda of this particular meeting, but have pictures of the 5 moments of hand hygiene of WHO. I think it really stands well even today. And frankly speaking, in fact, even WHO says that when you choose a hand wash solution, it need not be, for routine hand washing, it need not be an antiseptic based hand washing solution. It can be absolutely any simple hand wash solution. The hand wash solution has a detergent effect. It removes all the dirty and visible matter on the hand. So therefore, hand wash should be always encouraged whenever the hands are dirty, visibly soiled, before washing, before using the washroom, or after using the washroom, then before eating food. So these are some of the indications when hand wash is absolutely required. What about hand hygiene? Now, while we are all in the healthcare setup, we have so many opportunities to do hand hygiene that it would be impossible for us to really do hand washing at every point in time. And that's where the hand rub comes in, or the alcohol comes in, because it has a very quick and effective action within a matter of 20 seconds. And therefore, with every opportunity to do hand hygiene, excepting for when you have handled blood and body fluids, and when you are doing an invasive procedure, a hand rub is good enough and effective. To that, I must also add that these days, when we are doing so much of hand hygiene with an alcohol rub, have an interval of time when you are adding hand wash in between. Meaning, if you've done a hand rub at least 10 times or 15 times, then have an interval where you will do hand wash. Because these agents have a lot of emollients and other things which remain on the surface of your hand, and that needs to be removed. So I also see a lot of people using the hand rub and then going and eating food. Please don't do that. We shouldn't encourage that either in the healthcare setup or in the community. Neither encourage our children. I see a lot of people in the trains who children after college, they will take this hand rub and use it and then start eating, opening their lunch boxes. So that is absolutely a no-no practice. So both hand rub and hand wash have their own utilities in this particular setup. One is not better than the other. There are situations where your hand rub is good and more important to use, and there are situations where your hand wash is equally important. So that is what that should be followed.
Here, I'd really like to mention the WHO before touching a patient, before a procedure, after body fluid exposure, after touching the patient, and after touching patient surroundings.
Yes.
So these 5 touch points wherein we can, for our staff. I'm going to ask you, Aruna, to talk about a little of what is a sanitizer to be used, because off-shelf counters, you will get even herbal, menthol, Ayurvedic, non-toxic. You've just got a range of things which have no virucidal properties but are sold with the generic name called sanitizer. So something about that.
So before that, I think I would really like to, I missed the point on moment 5 of hand hygiene. And I think that's very, very crucial in today's times when we know that corona spreads indirectly also, through fomites and through contaminated surfaces. So if within the healthcare setup, anything which is in and around the patient, be it the patient's file, the monitor, the IV stand, the bed rails, all of these come under the patient's surroundings. And we must remember that and give a lot of significance to this moment 5. If you are handling any of these surfaces and then going back to your patient, please ensure that you do hand hygiene, meaning it could be an alcohol rub, as simple as that, but this will become a very, very important moment, and we fail to often recognize what really take an opportunity for this particular moment. Now, what's a sanitizer? I think, frankly speaking, I think it's a misnomer. These are all they're supposed to be hand hygiene products, and they should have some component at least which will have broad spectrum activity against microorganisms. Currently we are talking about virucidal effects against corona, and for that matter corona is a very simple, actually speaking, a very, very simple virus, because it's enveloped virus. It can be killed and destroyed by any and every simple antiseptic or disinfectant agent. So really we didn't need to hunt out for something very different for corona, frankly speaking. So the basic a hand hygiene product or a hand rub product should have is an alcohol which should be anywhere between 61 to 72%. 100% alcohol is not recommended because it does not have any antiseptic properties. Alcohol acts by protein denaturation, and that protein denaturation cannot take place if there is no water. So therefore, there has to be some component of water into it. And this concentration is very important. If you go to see, if you go to buy over-the-counter alcohol rubs, you will never see the concentration of alcohol in it, and that is very questionable. So always ensure that when you buy the product, there is at least this 60 to 70% of alcohol that is present and mentioned on that. It could be isopropyl alcohol, meaning 1 propanol, 2 propanol, a single alcohol based. In the healthcare setting, we normally prefer 2 alcohols, as a solution rather than a single alcohol. Plus, naturally, they would have a lot of emollients and other agents to ensure that the hand remains soft. Otherwise, the hands can get dry. That's a normal part and parcel of both hand washing as well as hand hygiene. This is what needs to be seen when it comes to hand hygiene products. Of course, there are products also which will have chlorhexidine, and a lot of times we may think that chlorhexidine is really, really important, but chlorhexidine has its own issues. Stability is one issue that may be there. Appropriate concentration is another issue that may be there. So the important point of chlorhexidine is that chlorhexidine has what is called as residual action, which means that it will remain active for at least about a couple of hours. So that's important. Where it's important probably in the OR, in the operating room, where you want to, meaning if you've done hand hygiene or you have done skin antisepsis, you want that residual action to be present for a little more time than just alcohol, which after about 30 seconds would go away. So you don't need chlorhexidine to be part of your alcohol rub all times. For routine care, I think just an alcohol rub should suffice. Chlorhexidine may be reserved for certain situations where you need residual action.
So what I can take back is up to 70% alcohol for generic use, preferably 2 alcohols in the formulation. There has to be water. Chlorhexidine and products like mesatronium, ethyl sulfate and things like that will add a little residual action. So maybe for ICU, ORs or things like that. Is that what is the take back?
Chlorhexidine. It's only chlorhexidine that has residual action.
So chlorhexidine will be for theaters. If we are using it as a final touch before donning the gloves, we can use it so that it has a residual effect for at least a few hours. So maybe the surgical people need to look at that product. The rest of the sanitization can be with just the alcohol combination Rohini, you're okay with this advisory? Or shall I take you?
I'm going to intervene and simplify things. Can I simplify things a little bit?
Absolutely.
We have to be practical in this situation. So if you ask me, the simplest thing to do is to use, and this is very important, to use a liquid soap. We said that this virus has a lipid cover. So use any good quality liquid soap and wash your hands at least for 20 seconds with water. Now, this is specifically for nursing homes because we are again looking at costs, etc. I'm not talking about operating room where you will stick to the same standards, that is you're going to use 4% chlorhexidine gluconate for hand wash, which is an antiseptic, and then whatever you do. For root care in homes, I would say use good quality liquid soap. Now, I'm going to say, because liquid soaps will have adequate amounts of emollients, fatty acids, etc. So wash your hands thoroughly for 20 seconds, dry them properly. I think drying is something that we are forgetting. Any surface which is moist is as good as an unwashed surface. So please bring in a drying step with a dry towel. It cannot be a wet towel because again, wet means transmission. And after that, follow it with an alcohol hand rub. So I'm going to wash your hands with a liquid soap. If you can use warm water, the benefit is any detergent and boiling water, because practically kill everything, and so does the coronavirus get killed with it. Aruna, you can step in and argue with me on that point if you wish to. The second point, we know today that chlorhexidine gluconate is the best, and before a surgical procedure, we are going to use a surgical scrub or a surgical hand wash with 4% chlorhexidine. So that practice stays. Coming back to the alcohol part, the concept.
Has the voice gone?
Yes.
Yeah, she's Rohini's lost.
Alcohol is very important. There are two types of alcohol that we get. There is ethyl alcohol and there is isopropyl alcohol, and there is methyl alcohol, which is spirit. Spirit is no longer recommended and not used in healthcare at all. We should discontinue. I'm aware that some nursing homes may be using it. Try and change to ethyl alcohol. Ethyl alcohol in this country is full of impurities. It is manufactured by the sugar industry, and hence the impurities in it affect the quality of alcohols. This is a genuine problem, and ethyl alcohol is readily available and it is a low cost item. So I have nothing against ethyl alcohol as long as you get a good quality ethyl alcohol. The impurities do interfere with the activity of ethyl alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol is more expensive, so people avoid using it, but isopropyl alcohol is probably better than that. Now, many people, I have been searching for what we call a surgical spirit, British pharmacopoeia. Surgical spirit is nothing but a mixture of all the alcohols. It also contains isopropyl and ethyl alcohol in certain concentrations. So if you can source from anybody surgical spirit, I always go by generics. If you can source surgical spirit British pharmacopoeia, that's probably one of the best alcohol formulations that we have. So again, let's be very simple. Use soap and water, dry your hands, and then use an alcohol for routine care. If you can afford to use an antiseptic, and the antiseptic of choice obviously is chlorhexidine gluconate, please go ahead and use that. It's usually 2% for hand wash, for hand hygiene, and it is 4% for surgical scrub.
Wonderful, Rohini. And something that we should maybe look at, and there are certain wonderful manufacturers where we are having no touch, both for water, that is the taps, as well as the dispenser. So you have foot operated, you have knee operated, and you also have automated. The simple reason is if people don't remember to sanitize the taps or to wash the taps itself, the recurrent use can cause them to be holding organisms. So either yes, we have a system wherein the taps are washed pre and post, and that kind of thing, or we can look at very simple operated mechanics. In fact, on our WhatsApp groups of nursing homes, there are many such people, local producers, who are coming with foot operated, no touch, knee operated and things. There is something else I'd just like to mention here. We need to put safety habits into our people, that is not to cough on the hand, not to use everywhere the handle to walk around. So pushing with the back, there are many videos that have been shown. Push the doors with the back, or try to have the taps that can be opened with the arm, and try to see that the medical staff, the healthcare workers, touch surfaces lesser and lesser and lesser. That is another thing that we can. But we now go to the air. So Aruna, if you could take up the
I
air.
want to make one point for small healthcare providers, which Madam Rohini has mentioned, the use of liquid soap. I think it's a very, very valid point where, you know, the nursing staff can actually be told how to use it and what are the hand wash techniques, because everybody's having these fancies of hand sanitizers and hand rubs, whereas actually the ground reality is that if you really wash your hand for a proper time with a proper liquid soap, then, you know, you can beat a lot of things at your small centers. Thank you, Rohini madam.
So Aruna, oh, you're on
Yeah.
mute. Ah, yeah. We can't hear you, Aruna.
Unmute.
Okay, my concern there with Dr. Manoj is that, you know, it's very important to do hand washing, but the number of opportunities that you will get to do hand hygiene while a person is there, particularly as IPD care, are so many that you cannot do hand washing so many times.
Yeah, I understand,
So,
madam.
so from that point of view, alcohol rubs have their role to play, and hand washing has certainly its own role to play.
Aruna, so we'd like to take air disinfection, and I want to know what are you advising us for larger surfaces? That is the rooms, corridors, aisles, patient movement. So fogging and exhaust. So I want you to tell us about all that.
So frankly speaking, meaning I don't think again with Corona, I want to do anything different that I've ever wanted to do previously. Fogging and fumigation is something which is not recommended. And in fact, it can only be injurious even at this point in time, because when you are doing any kind of fogging, you are producing small droplets of chemicals which remain in the air, and then our own healthcare workers and we breathe them, and it can cause harm to the respiratory tract. So I wouldn't really recommend the fogging part of it or the fumigation part of it, but certainly we should have good ventilation mechanisms. So any room, whether it is having an air handling unit or, you know, you have cross ventilation, you ensure that you have about 10 to 12 air changes per hour, which means that it is well ventilated, and that itself should suffice, rather than using indiscriminately one or the other kind of chemical agent and say that the air can be sterilized. The air can never be sterilized. Even if you do everything in a room, and the moment you open the room door and you go inside, it means that someone has moved in with organisms all over. So frankly speaking, I wouldn't want to advocate fumigation and fogging even at this juncture. Ensure that your room is well ventilated. If there is an exhaust system which can create a negative pressure, certainly the air goes out. And or else you ensure that there is some amount of cross ventilation. What is very important in this kind of a situation, whether it's a passage, whether it's a corridor, whether it's a room where you have housed and now you want to do terminal disinfection once the patient has gone away home, is do good thorough terminal cleaning with any kind of simple disinfectant that you already have. So naturally the government of India recommends 1% sodium hypochlorite for all surface disinfection. But you can use anything else. There are quaternary ammonium compounds. There are a whole lot of compounds that are in fact much more user friendly and friendly to the human, meaning to human beings, which are now available. So there's a whole lot of them that is available which can be used. They don't need to be very expensive also. Of course, sodium hypochlorite is something which is very, very readily available and has been recommended because it's readily available and it is cheap. That also can be used. But my concern with sodium hypochlorite would be the material compatibility. That would be one. When you're doing terminal cleaning, ensure that it is not only surfaces. I think we forget the linen, we forget the curtains. These are things that need to be taken care of, considering that organisms like Corona will remain in the environment for some time. There may be a few hours. We need to take care of these, the linen and the things that we forget. Normally we forget to disinfect. We need to ensure that they get changed at frequent intervals much earlier than what we were otherwise doing. So as a part of terminal disinfection, which means that your patient has gone away home and now you want to use the room for the next patient, these things should be included. Disinfection and removal of all these things should really be included, and ensure that you don't meaning have any complicated pieces of furniture, etc., within those areas, so that they can easily be disinfected once the patient has left.
So you're saying 1% hypochlorite significantly to be used, but we have mucosal tract issues, some nausea, some crampings, as well as material incompatibility. That means it can corrode metals and it can also
Yes.
harm certain sensors and finer equipment. So for those, we can use quaternary ammonium compound as well.
So small surfaces, meaning sensors and the monitors, etc., we can still use alcohol. Alcohol is a very good agent for small surfaces where it will remain for that time, for a contact time that will allow it to destroy. So at least about 30 seconds, if it is there, it will destroy organisms from the surfaces. Otherwise, whenever you are using disinfectants like sodium hypochlorite or quaternary ammonium compounds on larger surfaces, because larger surfaces will dry your alcohol, so it never gets that opportunity to really destroy the bug, and therefore you use other disinfectants and not really alcohol on larger surfaces. For these, naturally the concentration as recommended must be used, and the contact time, at least a minimum contact time of 10 minutes for any disinfectant is essential.
Okay, so another thing that we had mentioned, Aruna, if you remember, that all the surfaces that we use, mops and stuff, in smaller nursing homes, we should identify that if we are having a designated space, the mop cannot move from that designated space into another. So the NICU mop will remain in the NICU, the ICU will remain in the ICU, the COVID will remain in the COVID. So the number of mops or the equipment or the gadgets that are used. Secondly, it would help if we could do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday kind of a routine wherein one mop is used on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Otherwise, if they're continuously using it, like Rohini said, there's no drying time. There is fungus and other things. So we, in smaller setups, giving them adequate time to dry, as in bone dry, rather than call it just, damp. So the damp materials are not good. So we need to give them bone dry time, which means you have to allocate mops and other stuff that the healthcare workers would use, which needs to dry up. But I would want Rohini to take on the air disinfection, if there is anything that you would like to add on this one.
Sure. So the part that Aruna mentioned about ventilation is very important. Now, I'll assume that nursing homes would have air-conditioned rooms, small single rooms with air conditioning, or maybe 2 patients in a room. So the first thing that is important for you to realize is switch off the air conditioners. I know it's very hot in Mumbai, but you need to switch off the air conditioners, open the windows if you can. If you cannot, then make sure that you have something which is open in that room, either a chink in the window. Essentially, it creates negative pressure and allows the air from the room to flow out and not contaminate the rest of the nursing home. So yes, ventilation is very important. A point that I want to make is that we know today there are several studies that have shown that the coronavirus, the SARS-CoV-2 and even the SARS-CoV-1 for that matter, survive for long periods of time on plastic and metal surfaces. Now, metal means stainless steel. Most of us have stainless steel taps. Historically, we all used copper. Please remember that if I had a choice, I would replace all contact surfaces with copper, because copper does not allow. Copper is a brilliant disinfectant. It's a natural disinfectant that we've been using. We store Ganga water in copper containers. So why can't we replace many of our contact surfaces with copper? That will help lower bacterial counts. We've done a study in the Tata Memorial ICU some years ago, in which we found that actually copper has a sidle effect on microorganisms. So that's something to think about for nursing homes when you're undergoing renovations. I know that copper is a huge cost and would be stolen, but we need to take that opportunity and look at these things. I can see the smiles. Okay, now I'm not a believer of fumigation or fogging, but let me make one point that in these days, we know that this virus is airborne. We need to take precautions, and one of the really good agents that has come into the market is hydrogen peroxide stabilized with silver.
Yes.
It is a brilliant fogging agent. If you use it at the right concentration, and for fogging, you can use it at a 0.5, I'm repeating 0.5%. It will not corrode at this concentration, provided you use it in the right concentration, the right product, and you allow an exposure of about 20 minutes. So what could be done is that if you have I'm talking about if you have a patient, either suspected or, for example, a COVID positive patient in your nursing home, open out the air conditioning system. That means if you have a window air conditioner, open out the exhaust, keep it open. Let the air conditioning run for some length of time. Now, it's very difficult for me. Normally, we say about 2 hours when you have a negative pressure air conditioning, airborne isolation. You fog the room. with the 0.5% hydrogen peroxide, and allow the air conditioning to run, and then you can have somebody go in and clean up the room with even soap and water. It doesn't matter. So I'm bringing in this 0.5% because there is another brand which is unfortunately not available in India as yet, and I'm actually trying to source somebody to make it. It's called accelerated hydrogen peroxide. It penetrates. So if you fog with accelerated hydrogen peroxide, it will penetrate through all your linen and whatever you have in the room. So I would encourage you, if you have a positive patient for terminal cleaning, to fog it with, I'm repeating, hydrogen peroxide stabilized with at a concentration of 0.5%. And if you're using sodium hypochlorite, please use it at a concentration of 0.1%. 1% is going to corrode everything. So 0.1%, and you can even use this for discarding your surgical, that means post-op surgical instruments. They will not corrode at this concentration. Of course, there is a risk of corrosion. The problem is that we don't dilute the sodium hypochlorite properly. The other point I wish to make is that sodium hypochlorite use has to be a USP grade. It has to be United States pharmacopoeia grade hypochlorite in these days of the kind of problems that we're seeing. And it should be at a minimum strength of 5%. So it is the 5% that you bring down to 0.1%, and you can use it. 0.5% for general purpose usage. And so 0.1% is now recommended by all the international authorities. So it is either 0.1% or 0.5% sodium hypochlorite. I'm aware that the Indian government of India says 1%. It is a high concentration. It's going to corrode. I would use 1% for discard of all my waste, but not for the other purposes that I'm referring to. And of course, soap and hot water. To me, soap and hot water cleaning is probably the best. It will kill everything. When I say hot water, it's boiling water. By the time you use it, it's about 80 degrees. Yes, so that's about what I would.
So that's a great take. So we have talked about the hypochlorite. We've talked about the hydrogen peroxide with silver fogging, especially for the COVID patients. So the COVID suspect and COVID, I think we should look up for this kind of a fogging material. One more thing that I had said was the floors and others. I think we could still go with phenol and Lysol, for the general floor cleaning. Any take on that one, Rohini or
Aruna? So don't use any phenolics because of the toxicity. We don't recommend that. One more point I wanted to make, quaternary ammonium compounds with COVID do not work as well. There are many studies that have said that they don't work as well as sodium hypochlorite. So for room disinfection, etc., I would still use sodium hypochlorite. I would use soap and water followed by sodium hypochlorite as a disinfectant for floors and for practically anything and everything. Aruna, do you agree with me?
Yes, I think it's something which is very widely available, so it can easily be used.
Fine.
It's very, very cheap also. Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing which I wanted to ask I think since we are now at 1843, I'm going to ask Anchal to quickly run on some kind of standards. She's a vendor. She's got something called HospiMart, wherein I'm wanting her to get in more and more of Indian manufacturers on her board for all the can be a one-stop shop for us. So can you tell us a little about purchasing, the vendor thing, and we'll come back to our main discussion.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Sangeeta, for having me here. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So basically, being a vendor, we deal with a lot of companies who manufacture and things like that. And especially in such times, we have seen that every Tom, Dick and Harry has started either manufacturing or selling hand rubs and sanitizing. Right from travel agents to people who are doing varied businesses are getting into this kind of a business, who don't even know the age of healthcare, are selling healthcare products which are so essential for us. So there are certain things which I thought that we should check and do a ground check reality before we move ahead. Simple things like, the quality, if we can ascertain the certifications which are coming from, where is a vendor, ISO C certified, GMP, WHO and all these things. So check the documents of the vendor, first of all, the antimicrobial efficacy that they promise. We should, just ask them for certification for that as well. The personal and hygiene, health and safety, precautions, are they taken, or as per the personal health and safety, are they complying to those parameters? Specifically for instruments and material handling, the compatibility of the instruments that we are, going to use these kind of solutions for. Obviously, the environmental friendliness and the cost. Also, what has happened is something like the assumed value and the assured value. A lot of people say, oh yeah, 60% alcohol, 62% alcohol, or 70% alcohol. But is it really that much? Again, ask for your certificates. And we are also trying to compile all this information, with us. And as we move forward, we are evolving in this process. So it's not about just selling a product. I think we need to, also tell the nursing home owner or the hospital owner to check with the microbiologist what is suitable for their kind of application, and check the component and check the certification, check the facts before we buy it. Even the quality of the raw ingredient that is used is important. And if there are certain certificates which can be available from the manufacturer with respect to that, even, we should leave no stone unturned, because we have a right to know what we are buying and what is really going into that. As well as even sometimes, these things are manufactured by a third party. So is the third party really certified, to produce the products, and do they have the necessary compliances in place? Also, some of the companies which, have their manufacturing setups in India, but they give you certificates which are from, abroad or some other places. Are they really valid? So we must just check on these things before we tread ahead, because we have all sorts of varieties and ranges in the market. Somebody called me up today offering, 1/4 the price of a hand rub, but when I asked for composition, there was really not much legit information regarding that. So basically, something we have to ensure that, everything is legit what we use, and the vendor should be able to provide certification and documentation for this, and also in accordance with the microbiologist. So here, the experts and the microbiologists can, guide. And as we spoke now, what all, if an advisory is released for the Bombay, for the Nursing Home Association, and if this can be all compiled, and then it will be very easy to understand what sort of composition should be used for what. So maybe we are not overdoing it, or we are not underdoing it. So this is what all that I say. And then definitely the number of years of experience should be, please taken into account, because as I said, people who don't know the age of healthcare also jumping into this healthcare business right now. And obviously Sermaxo is one of the companies that we found which are there, and we're going ahead and listing them on our site. But as we move forward, we are collecting information from a lot of vendors. And as Sangeeta ma'am said, like, yes, make in India and Indian manufacturers, we are working and we are getting this information. So we are evolving in this process. And with your guidance and support, we will definitely have this, and we'll keep sharing these updates with you regularly as we keep compiling this information. Also,
So basically, yeah.
No, so I would share my email ID. It's info@hospimart.in. So if the listeners here can drop in their information, and as we keep updating, we can keep informing and notifying them also. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So thank you, Anchal. Can we take the PPT out?
Yes, sure.
All right. So basically, I wanted to. So
over here.
I can't. Yeah, Nilima, go ahead.
Yeah. As a homeowner, since we have experts over here, when we talk about as a nursing home owner, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
A very practical question is about how to formulate this sodium hypochlorite. When we are talking about 0.1%, 0.5%, but in a nursing home, if I want to constitute it, what exactly are we using and how are we reconstituting, and what is the concentration? Something like 1 cup with 10 cups, you tell us the dilution in which we are supposed to use the locally available products.
So usually, Nilima, most of the manufacturers will put up on the cover or along with the box, they will give you an instruction of the dilution. They will actually write all the details. That's what, in a way, I had asked Anchal, because the validation process of what we are buying, because the first lot, and the reason I got Anchal inside this discussion was the first lot of stuff that I bought from another nursing home owner, and I actually started using it. I realized after I bought it that the manufacturer's name, telephone number, address, no contact, ingredients were not mentioned. But I had spent about 10,000 on buying the material, because I hadn't realized at that time what I was buying. I wasn't getting anything. I got gels and so that is when I realized some amount of validation was necessary. And like she said, over the last 1 month, I've seen kind of anybody and everybody. I also spoke to FDA, and FDA said that they have given licenses in the last 2 months to alcohol producing companies, to scent making companies, and many others, because the demand was so high. But I have to say that it's our industry which has come up. Atmanirbhar is really the key word, because the MNCs have not been able to cope up with our colossal requirement or reach out to the small people, and therefore there is a need for the small sector to provide with us. But the dilution part, Rohini madam, would you like to take the dilution part question, please?
Yeah, sure. So the sodium hypochlorite that we get, as I mentioned earlier, is at a concentration of 5%. Please check that it is 5% USP grade. This is to be diluted with tap water. When we want to use it at a 1% concentration, you would dilute it 1 cup in 4 cups of water. And when you want to use it at a 0.1%, you would use 1 cup in 49 cups of water. So that is a simple formula that you can evolve. I suggest that you have a cup ready and you tell your staff that you use half a bucket, say half a bucket. So you calibrate your buckets. The bucket would be, say, 5 liters or whatever. You calibrate your bucket. Based on that, you fix the cup dilution and have it ready for your staff to understand. Please make sure you use it, make it fresh in tap water, never use hot water, and never mix hypochlorite with anything else. Because sometimes you feel like, for example, in the olden days, people used to mix what they called a Savlon with povidone iodine because it created lather. So don't go by lather. And it's very important to tell your staff that you use 1 cup of this, say 1 cup in half a bucket. So the bucket or the jar that you use probably is a better system. So I would say 1 in 5, 1 in 50. That's the buzzword to remember. Have your appropriate dilutions, meaning the buckets and the cups or the mugs ready. And it's fairly simple to do this. That's the other thing for hydrogen peroxide, you can do the same thing, because hydrogen peroxide, some people make it at 20%, some make it at 11%. So accordingly, calculate your dilutions and have them ready. Don't tell them to use 0.1%. Tell them that this is to be used in this way. So just look at the concentration on your the product that you are using, and accordingly have somebody intelligent to make those dilutions. But for hypochlorite, it is clearly with tap water, fresh, every single day. The next morning you can use it to wash your toilets and prepare a fresh hypochlorite. One more important point is the shelf of sodium hypochlorite. Since it is chlorine, so please that you're not using an expired sodium hypochlorite.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you. And we are going to quickly run over things that nursing home land up doing. I think Manoj and Nilima, we land up holding Cheetles, blood pressures, stethos, hammers, common water jugs. We've said other things like plastic toilet taps, lift handles, switches. The nursing home owners have to get very, careful about all these smaller objects that land up lying in the corners for days on without sterilizing. The fundamental of Cheetles has to go. Cheetles have to be autoclaved for the tray for the next 4 hours, but keeping these Cheetle fundamental is wrong, because you land up using the Cheetles again and again. And that is where I think some bit of relearning will have to be done. The BP cuffs will have to be removed and washed and dried. Otherwise, we're going to reuse some of that. We have hardly about 8 minutes. Should we go with our wrapping up? There are just so many things that I had further, but I think we'll have to wrap up.
Can I talk?
Yeah, please, Manoj.
I think the Aanchal role over here, where we look into, as she already said, that there are upteen number of companies which have somehow managed to get these certificates for their products and all that, whether it is hand sanitizations or detergents or fumigation solutions, whatever. I think one person has to take a role where we can actually scrutinize these certifications, because we really don't know how these certifications have been achieved in such a short duration, whether it is bribery involved or what is not. But I think if Hospimart plays a role for small healthcare providers, where we can, certify the products and scrutinize their certifications, it would play a major role.
Sure, sir. Sure.
In fact, that is what I requested Aanchal. I said, you will become a vendor aggregator kind of a word if I'm using it right, or at least a validator. So you kind of start looking and assisting the nursing home owners, because finally when we say hydrogen peroxide, we still need to procure a good company product. Or we are saying hypochlorite, we need a company which is, authentic at least, and there is no label fraud. So the label says 1%, but inside there's something else because the company had no certification.
And finally, we can then send a list across to all the nursing home owners, daycare centers, where we can, recommend that these could be the ideal products to be used. I'm really looking for that kind of a list to come across to me.
In fact, Manoj, the request to Nilima and you, and the reason both of you secretaries are with us, is that you can eventually start putting up this information on the website for all of us to be able to access. So whatever gets ratified, that Aanchal ratifies, or, anyone you do, through Aruna, you can do, through Rohini Madam, you can take assistance. Once you get that the product is ratified, Also hoping to do it with our Indian companies. That's my whole hope, because I really want to see that, the medium-sized healthcare providers as well as companies. But Rohini, you are there for the last word. I have extreme regards for
I
the
would just
final
like to
verdict.
find one last line where the www.bnha.in is a website where we have put a lot of legal information. We have put a lot of COVID related information as a Google Drive so people can really access that. And once we have the list of vendors and products, we can put up that also. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Nilima?
AMC website also is updated with a lot of COVID related information and fantastically prepared presentations. Since we have Dr. Aruna and Dr. Rohini over here, one query from my side is, how often do we mop our floors in a day so that it gives us effective sanitization?
Ma'am, you will take this first.
I think Rohini is off. I can't see her.
Here too.
Rohini,
Aruna,
are you there?
that for us? How often do
Okay.
we mop?
Hello.
Yeah, Aruna, I can hear you.
So basically, I think, again, it would depend upon what kind of activity you are doing. If you are in the OR and you are involved with aerosol generating procedures, it has to be soon after you have finished with that particular procedure. If it's going to be your routine IPD and OPD settings, at least have it meaning 2 to 4 hours. If you have an intensive care kind of a setting, do it every 2 hours. If you are doing it in your OPD settings, have it at least about 4 hourly intervals. It will have to, environmental disinfection is a very crucial aspect today of prevention and control of COVID. So it needs to be done more frequently than what we used to do previously. So 2 to 4 hours depending upon the activities.
Rohini is back. I want you to have the last word on exactly how frequently and any changes that will be seen with the rains coming in. Anything that you'd like to add that we might have missed?
Yeah, I think, am I audible? Because there
Yes.
seems to be some,
Yes.
I'm just.
Oh, it's again.
Hello.
For everybody who's missing Rohini, she's in Panchgani. She's probably having a wonderful climate, but a little connectivity issue.
Hello, sorry, I lost connectivity. So the one of the points that is important, and which is probably, hello, yeah, okay.
Switch off your video, you will get better audio connectivity.
Yeah, I'm just turning off the video. So one of the important points that I wanted to make is that please remember that any surface that is contaminated should be cleaned immediately. So we missed out on that point. We've talked about disinfectants and everything else. So any contamination needs to be dealt with immediately. It has to be cleaned with detergent, water, disinfected, all of that. That's one important point. The frequency of cleaning, it's a very difficult question, but it's like at least your surfaces and other areas during this period should be cleaned 3 times a day. At least 3 times a day or twice a day if you can't. And of course, if they are contaminated. Just one point I didn't make, and I wanted to make about the point that Anchal and Dr. Manoj Gandhi raised, is that the quality of disinfectants is something that is totally unregulated in this country. It's unfortunate, and there are just too many of them. So disinfectant testing is something that I took up about 20 years ago at Tata Memorial. We tried to set up standards, but there is no lab that disinfectant way is to be. So a proper place that's doing disinfectant testing to some level is the Haffkine Institute. And the guidelines that are to be followed are the EN standards. They are extremely complicated. So what I started doing towards here in Tata Memorial is I would ask every vendor to submit a certification. And I made sure that, of course, it has to be Indian FDA certified. Besides that, they have to follow the EN standards for testing. If they give report of EN, now this is very high tech, very high level. But when there are so many companies, I don't think we have an option. And then there is a very simple method that I had set up, which I could share with you later. I think Aruna knows we did a workshop on disinfectant testing. So if you need any help on the quality of these things, I think you probably need to contact the Hospital Infection Society Mumbai Forum, and maybe we can help you out. Aruna is the leader in our group. So maybe she can set up something and I can tell you the methods that we're using for testing. there's simple methods on how you can check whether it actually works or not.
Yeah, thank you very much. We are at exact 7 p.m. I know there are a lot of unanswered questions. We haven't been able to cover everything, but this is probably just the beginning. If the audience and anybody who's logged in has any queries, you can please direct it to us. Rohini madam has very graciously said that I'm available for anybody who has queries. Aruna is also available. Nilima, Manoj, and me also. We have most of your phone numbers, but in case you haven't sent us your numbers, please do send us. You can search up the Nursing Home Association or AMC or any one of us and get in touch with us. Whatever data we have, we'll send you messages regarding the connectivity to all the speakers who are there. If you think you need some second chapter on this, do let us know. And thank you. And I love a statement in my presidential of AMC. I had released a book with Johnson which says Infection Prevention Handbook. And it says, do it right and chill. So I hope we all do the correct thing. So we do it right and chill. And then we should be safe from Corona. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sirmaxo. Thank you, all the speakers.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.